Herschel has said, he said in a book that he has multiple personality disorder, but he's beaten it, he's cured it. Doctors say that there's no cure to that. I'm talking about voting for somebody, sending them to Washington to be a senator with that malady. Does that give you pause at all?
No, not at all, not at all. I mean, I can't believe in Pennsylvania they voted for Fetterman, and he's a lot worse off. I can't believe they voted for Fetterman.
I've heard him speak several times. He's an incredible person. Yeah, he had some stumbles, and he addresses it, and he learned from it. And he says God uses him and built him from that. But I am 100% behind him.
Fetterman had a stroke.
Right.
That's a medical thing. It happens to many people. That's it. That's it. He also, by the way, has served in government at multiple levels for many years. Now, granted, he doesn't have a badge, okay? He doesn't carry around a fake badge that he got at Party City. So that's a downside for Fetterman. But other than that, he's a serious guy who talks about the actual issues. It is absurd that you would conflate the two. But also, I just want to briefly say, and I understand that this is something that just gets under my skin or whatever, saying that he acknowledges his problems. First of all, no, he very much does not. Yes, he has written a book about some of those problems. He has also refused to address many of the worst scandals, okay? When your son comes out publicly and say that you terrorized them out of multiple homes, clearly physically abused them, and you refuse to even acknowledge that, let alone explain it, and that didn't happen 20 years ago, that was much more recent, then don't tell me about how you've addressed all of your actual problems. This is not just an issue of the lies that he told over the last 20 years. He continued as a candidate to tell insane lies about his work history, about his history as an FBI agent, about any number of different things. And then on the religious thing, I understand the concept of forgiveness is a very big one, especially for certain religious communities. I understand that. But there is a difference between asking for forgiveness and just loudly telling everyone that you've been given it over and over and over again. So shut up and stop asking me about these scandals. Stop asking me about how I wanted to go murder someone because I'm telling you I was forgiven. Shut up. That is not what that process is supposed to be like. It is not supposed to be a one and done. You now are a great person and you can lord it over everyone else. And the people who in their interviews with you would talk about how forgiveness is important, I would really love to ask some follow-up questions about how broad-based their forgiveness would be. Is it just for Republican Senate candidates, or would you apply that to other people who have fallen short in aspects of their life along the way? I have a feeling it's probably pretty limited who they'll dole that forgiveness out to.
You do run into a great deal of hypocrisy with a lot of these people who say, well, this person has asked for forgiveness, or this person made some mistakes. They'll very often say to me, well, who's perfect among us, right? But they're gonna say that because Raphael Warnock allegedly owns a building that from which people have evicted, and that's a longer story, that his imperfection is worse than Herschel Walker and what his imperfections are. So they start comparing these things and they have this kind of sort of disconnect from what is reality because they want an excuse to be able to vote for their person who has an R, who is so flawed and so, objectively, because I've covered many candidates, objectively one of the very worst candidates I've ever seen stand for an office like this.
Let me speak to the negatives of Warnock. Over and over again, we have been subjected to commercials in the state of Georgia about Warnock evicting people.
Right.
That is a lie. Warnock did not evict anybody. The evictions they are referencing actually predate Warnock being pastor of Ebenezer. And there are some evictions that took place obviously while he was the pastor, but the ones that were egregious, those were the ones that predated him. In addition to that, Ebenezer as a church, as an organization, it actually does own property. They have an administrative pastor. That administrative pastor takes care of the administrative dynamic of the church so that the pastor, i.e. Raphael Warnock, can focus on the dynamics of the ministry. They have had that kind of system in place since the days of Dr. King, all right? So they want to attribute this to the pastor when the functional control of these dynamics are very different internally for the church itself. And let me also highlight something that my dear brother John said, and I agree with you 100%. Forgiveness, even to me, is a powerful dynamic. I'm a man of faith. I try not to be religious, but I do know this. Without acknowledgement, you cannot believe in the transformation of anybody. If you're not willing to acknowledge the mistakes that you have made, to honestly acknowledge them, I have a hesitation believing that you have transformed from anything. We've all made mistakes. We will make more. But typically, transformation is coupled with true acknowledgement. That's one thing Herschel Walker has never done on this campaign trail.
I agree.
And these people say that he has. And these people, and just for point of reference here, when I was talking about Warnock, I wasn't talking about that as being fact. I'm talking about what they are saying. Like, I'm presenting the worst thing they've said about Warnock, and so it does. You try when you're there and speaking to them. You just like I say it's like opening a vein and letting them bleed. You just talk to them and hear what they have to say. Often it's astonishing. Sometimes it's thoughtful. It's very often real. And when you go to these events these are more substantive people than you would see at a Save America Donald Trump rally. When I say substantive, these are people who allege that they are religious, who seem more educated, who seem totally divorced from the idea of QAnon and those sorts of things. I'm not speaking about all of them, but many of the ones that both Zefri Throwell, who shot these with me, and myself found. And so you're dealing with a different type of audience at these kinds of things. But they are people, like you said, John, take time out of their day to show up to an event. And that event has Herschel Walker surrounded by Lindsey Graham and a newly elected African American. And I say that because it's very important what they're trying to paint. Lindsey Graham got out there and said, let's increase our diversity, let's get more women. And then they put Herschel Walker up there, and it's an embarrassment.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned some of the surrogates that he's been appearing with. It is possible that some voters were confused about exactly who the candidate was, since they have not seen Herschel Walker in a TV interview without at least one other senator flanking him for at least a month now. Maybe they think they're voting for Ted Cruz, which will probably doom Herschel Walker as well. For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.